Wait. So exactly 3 years from today. How can you possibly know that? Ridiculous. June 6, 1941. Defeated in Greece. Defeated on Crete. What does the British High Command do next? Make big plans for bringing the fight to the enemy. I'm Indy Neidell. This is World War II. Last week, Britain mobilized over 5 dozen ships in the Atlantic to sink the German battleship Bismarck, which managed to destroy the famous British battlecruiser Hood. The fighting in South Shanxi ended, the Allies prepared to evacuate Crete, and the British made preparations for both North Africa and Syria. Commander of the Middle East Theater Archie Wavell's plan for Operation Battle Axe in North Africa is to send the Western Desert Force to take the Halfaya Pass and then secure the whole region from Bardia to Capuzzo. They would beat the enemy from Tobruk to El Adem and then head west towards Derna and Mechili. Their garrison, now under siege at Tobruk, would attack the enemy in the rear when things got going. The planned date for the kickoff is the 15th. And that's mainly because they're rebuilding the 7th Armored Division at the moment. The Matilda, cruiser, and light tanks brought in last month from Britain by Operation Tiger are being modified for the desert, and their crews are being trained. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, he's pissed off that it's taking so long, but Wavell says he will not begin until the 15th. The thing is, Erwin Rommel, commanding the enemy, is also building up and consolidating his forces. He now has the 15th Panzer Division and Italian infantry at the border region. That's like 100 tanks and 40,000 men. David Braddock says the RAF has 105 bombers and 98 fighters there, and the Luftwaffe 84 and 130. Well, that seems fairly even until you realize that many of the British crews have no battle experience, having arrived fresh from Britain to make up for the crews lost in Crete and Greece. In terms of actual tactics, Wavell's been looking at 3 different plans. One is sending the 7th Armored to actively seek out a battle, but that would disperse his forces and they might not find battle. One is to just hold the coast and then swing the armor around to the left against Tobruk. But he doesn't think he has enough men and vehicles for that. So the one he's going for is the one which allows the maximum cohesive force maintainable in the field at once. That force is the 13th Corps under Noel Beresford Pierce, made up of the 7th Armored under Sir Michael Craig, the 22nd Guards Brigade, and the 11th Brigade of the 4th Indian Division, who we've seen a lot of in East Africa this winter and spring, and who are now en route to Egypt. I'll go over the tactical details of the plan next week. Beresford Pierce sets up his headquarters at Sidi Barrani, which is 5 hours' drive from where the nearest action will be. But any closer, and he could not guarantee constant contact with Royal Air Force headquarters. Sidi Barrani is also the most forward location with a good airstrip for recon flights. The RAF is going to bomb Axis supply routes and supply dumps until the 12th, and then we'll focus on the area between the frontier and Tobruk and the local Axis-held airfields. Air Marshal Arthur Tedder is in charge of the British planes, and he plans fighter cover for the actual fighting and bombers available to hit enemy columns if the enemy calls them in. The Navy will keep supplying Tobruk like it's been doing, but will also be on call to open up the port of Sollum. There will not be a naval bombardment though, because if they did that, they need to pull fighters away from the Army's support to protect the fleet. As for Wavell's plans for Syria, well, Wavell has asked the Free French forces in Egypt under General Georges Catroux to go to Palestine for a possible invasion of Syria. The 7th Australian Division has been ordered to North Palestine and the 5th Indian Infantry Brigade to the northern part of Transjordan. Wavell has Palestine Commander Henry Wilson make preparations for an advance into Syria. Wavell does tell the War Office that he has reservations about using the Free French there, since they might stiffen the Vichy French resistance, since many on each side consider the others to be traitors. The plan of attack is to hit the Vichy French on multiple fronts. The invasion should go as quickly as possible. They cannot afford a long engagement. So the Indian Brigade is to occupy Deraa and take the Yarmouk Railway. This would cripple the Vichy movement of men and supplies. As for the Free French, they would head straight for Damascus, take it from the Vichy French, and occupy it. The Australians are to advance in 2 columns, one to occupy Marjane and the other to head up the coast towards Beirut. Now that last is to cut off the ports from the rest of the country. Wavell also manages to gather up other forces. Joined by British Major General John Bagot Glubb with his Transjordan Arab Army, General Wavell also assembled British and Scottish regulars from various units around the Middle East. Along with these soldiers, the resourceful Wavell pulled together Anzacs, Canadians, Indians, mostly Sikhs and Gurkhas, and Free French, Australians, New Zealanders, and Free Czechoslovakian soldiers. Their Vichy opponents were backed by Senegalese, Lebanese, Algerians, and Moroccans. On the 4th, the British bomb oil and water supplies in and around Beirut. The Vichy French respond the next day with a bombing run on Amman, the capital of Transjordan, which is kind of interesting since that city has no military significance for the British, no munitions or troops. It was pure retaliation for the act of bombing. And as the week comes to its end, that invasion is actually just about to begin. While another invasion some 800 kilometers to the west is coming to its end, the German invasion of Crete. The British are evacuating. As dawn rises on the 31st and the new week begins, newly promoted British Vice Admiral Edward King sails from Alexandria for Crete with 2 cruisers and 2 destroyers. The Mediterranean fleet took some real damage helping defend Crete, as we saw, but Fleet Admiral Andrew Cunningham sends the ships anyhow, saying, "It takes the Navy 3 years to build a new ship. It will take 300 years to build a new tradition. The evacuation will continue." Those ships returned safely on the 1st with 4,000 men, but the cruiser Calcutta, sent out to give them cover, is sunk. The evacuation is over, but there are still some 5,000 Allied troops left on Crete. The Royal Navy fears that with a waxing bright moon and long days as midsummer approaches, any more ships sent will be vulnerable to dive bombers both day and night. In his book Crete, Anthony Beevor brings something up. Make of it what you will. Much has been made of the fact that out of 5,000 troops left behind, there was no officer above the rank of lieutenant colonel, that a far higher proportion of officers got away than men. Jack Hampson, Trinity University lecturer before the war, but now assigned to the Special Operations Executive and who's been in Crete for weeks preparing for its defense and is one of those captured, will write this. One of the worst episodes in the affair was the notion that superior officers were especially valuable, that there was an obligation upon them to save themselves, that they were not firmly and personally committed in the issue of the operations they were conducting, and would have an opportunity to try again another day. There were some honorable exceptions, but for the most part we witnessed a damnable and disgraceful scramble for priority, a claim to the privilege of escape based on rank and seniority. Certainly a fair amount of blame for the failure of the defense at Crete lies with Commander Bernhard Freiburg's interpretation, or lack thereof, of the intelligence provided by Ultra. No commander so far this war, until Freiburg, has received such precise intelligence on what the enemy was planning to do, when he was planning on doing it, and with what forces he was going to use. But Freiburg remained adamantly convinced that the main invasion, in spite of the intelligence, was going to come by sea. No intel ever mentioned any seaborne troops arriving. It did say that mountain troops were to be part of the invasion, but Freiburg assumed they were coming by sea based on his own speculations and not what intelligence had actually provided. It's one thing, though, to believe that before the invasion. It's another to continuously refuse to believe what is happening after the invasion has begun. He did not even turn his attention to Malmö until 2 days after the airborne invasion, by which time the Germans had not only taken the airfield there, but had landed reinforcements in numbers so large that a German victory was guaranteed. I read an anecdote in that book that Dr. Theodore Stefanidis, who served in the Royal Army Medical Corps in the battles for both Greece and Crete, notes that once back in Cairo, the military bureaucracy is as much fun as always. People who served and fought in Greece and Crete are notified that the colonial allowance, which they receive for service in places like Egypt, will be docked from their pay for the entire period of their absence from Egypt, spent actively fighting the enemy in Europe. So the men spread the word that they're going to each get a special Crete evacuation medal with the inscription, Ex Creta. In London, morale is at a low. For all the jokes that BEF stands for back every fortnight. You cannot ignore two recent evacuations. The Germans advancing in North Africa, the coup in Iraq, the Luftwaffe bombing of the House of Commons in May. Even the sinking of the Bismarck last week did not really make up for losing the Hood. Churchill takes a ton of criticism. People wonder that if the Germans can take Crete by air from 350 kilometers away, what's going to happen to Britain? Ironically, after Crete, they actually do not have to worry about a similar attack on their own island. Kurt Student, who planned the whole airborne operation, and his officers go to Germany and are awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. But while there, Adolf Hitler tells Student that Germany will never do another airborne operation, and that Crete shows the days of parachute troops are over. Most of Student's men will be sent to Operation Barbarossa, the coming invasion of the USSR, as ground troops. Germany took 6,580 casualties in the whole 2-week Crete operation. Airborne troops killed the first day make up half of this total. But definitely worse for Germany's future is the loss of 350 planes, specifically 151 Junkers transports. And here are a couple of notes to end the week. On May 31st, the mayor of Baghdad surrenders and Britain officially wins the Anglo-Iraqi War. And on June 4th, Kaiser Wilhelm, the last German emperor, who ruled Germany from 1888 until the final days of the First World War, dies in the Netherlands, where he has lived in exile since that war. And another week of the war comes to its end, with British success in Iraq and failure on Crete, but immediate plans for Syria and North Africa. The invasion of Syria is planned for 2 days from now. Yeah, that went quick. And with a hodgepodge of forces as well. But Wavell and Britain needs a win after Crete, which has already erased the morale boost of East Africa, and he's going for it in Syria and North Africa as soon as possible. If only something could happen to distract the Germans' attention for a while. If only. If you'd like to see a Between Two Wars episode about colonialism in the Middle East in the 1930s, you can click right here for that. Our Time Ghost Army member of the week is Renan Tangai. Tangai? Cool name anyway. Fun spelling, actually. Join the army at patreon.com or timeghost.tv and help us cover this war all the way to its conclusion. Do not forget to subscribe and... That's how long you should be washing your hands. See you next time.